So perfect. All right, everybody, it is 7 o'clock and I think Joe is almost ready to be ready. All right, so we're gonna get started. It is ice cold in here, so we're gonna go through this agenda hopefully very quickly and can get everybody out into one place. I'm told. So we're gonna go ahead and start talking about what we're gonna do next Monday. We do have proclamation for Sherwood Pharmacy. Bring this something to Gary. Wanted to do, Gary, you want to handle the action for next Monday? Well, that's fine.
Yeah, they sent an email about that, which I'm not, responded to anything to, but it's, where I can issue appointments and that. And I have not, checked it down, so I guess I'll call her and see if she's coming. Yeah, it'll be here for a second. So I'll put that.
Thank you. And then we'll put Gary's name by our later. Next we'll move on to our old business items. We've got three. Number one is the veto, year RZ-24-004. And I think Jane talked last month about the process, for that. Any additional information to any that okay. Next, we'll move on to the 2025 proposed operation and capital improvement budget. I know there's been some work since the last meeting. I'm going to recognize Mr. Radford to kind of maybe go through the changes that have been made since the last presentation was made.
I'm going to give a $30,000 level first time in the operating budget. The only change was to eliminate the new position in code enforcement and planning and reducing the transfer out to the CIP by $175,000. And that transfer out from the CIP, you'll see why. How that was accomplished as we look at the CIP itself. So I'll turn it over to Troy to give you an overview of changes that were made in this capital improvement budget.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. It did not buy me much time to pull up my presentation, but there were a very few number of changes that we accomplished since the November meeting. And I want to just highlight a few of those. So in the center of this document are the changes that we made to the capital improvement budget from the November 11th version. We reduced the number of projects from 26 to 22, deleting Oak Street Pickleball Park, bowl improvements phase 4, and all of the gateway signage related items. We deferred Champion Tree Park to FY26, and we deferred the streetscape and roundabout project also to FY26. In the document that we'll release here shortly, at the bottom there is a legend. It's pretty small and hard to read, I'm sure, on the screen, but it highlights the changes that were made from the November 11th version. On the left, you'll see that Champion Tree Park is designated as well as downtown streetscape upgrades and roundabout project. So those are the two changes with that. It reduces the number of projects in 2025 to 10 projects from 14, and the cost is about the same because the largest component of that is the Transco project and the pedestrian bridge. Source of funds changed slightly, but not that significantly. And then the overall source of funds didn't change that significantly either. I obviously didn't get a chance to sort them by amount, so this is what it is. But you can pick up where the sources are identified. That's really all I've got for the CIP update.
Yeah, so overall, the net reduction in the general fund from last month is $302,000, and the net reduction in the capital improvement program in the current year is $271,000. So with that, those are the changes that we knew about that y'all wanted us to make, and we did so, and I would recommend the adoption once you take it over and are satisfied with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul and Troy. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Mayor, we had also discussed dropping out the parking deck, which is still in there.
Got it.
The parking deck and downtown parking was in the intergovernmental agreement of the 2023 SPLOST. Now, we don't have any year for it, particularly yet, Troy, actually programmed, but that is in our intergovernmental agreement and was before the voters on in November of '22.
That's still not the agreement we made.
I don't recall you discussing that with me, but there.
That was absolutely part of it.
All right, any other questions or comments? Yes.
Okay, I would like to say that basically, I am pleased that this year's budget did represent compromises on some of the items. I know that at the November work session and council meeting, I had addressed the cost of travel, and I did notice when I went through the new budget as opposed to the original budget, there are some changes with travel. Originally, in the 2025 budget, all the travel expenses came to just a little over $77,000. And with the changes, I had proposed some changes. Some were accepted, some were not. I was pleased. I wasn't sure if any of them would be. So the travel budget goes from 77 to 66. And I'm pleased to see that some of those were taken into consideration. Another item that I had addressed and that I looked at line by line was education and training for all the departments. And the original budget in October that we looked at in November was a little over $75,000. And I had looked at that and made a few changes, and a few of them were accepted. And now with the new proposal, it's at a little over $64,000. And I think that this is important. When we have a budget and we're talking about spending tax dollars, money, we're talking about spending the money of the residents of Sugar Hill. Compromise and discussions are absolutely vital. And I think this is the most time I've ever spent on a budget going over it line by line. But that's what it deserved. That's what it needed. That's my responsibility as a council member. There are a couple of items in the capital improvement budget that were also compromised and talked about. As Troy mentioned, we're putting off the pickleball court at Oak Street Park, but keeping the playground there. And I had mentioned totally moving the Oak Street Park to 2026. This was a compromise, and it's one that I can easily agree with, keeping the
It
playground.
actually was moved to 2026. The first funding is $50,000 in 2026, so it was moved just like you asked for it to be moved. I'd like for it to be in the 2025 budget because I think it's important, and the communities thinks it's important, but we did move it to 2026. So
You had called me about that, and we agreed to put that back in.
I would love to have that in there, but we agreed to do the inclusive park in there for 50. I'd love to do the
Oh, you're talking just the
inclusive.
pickleball park. Okay,
and,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
My
correct.
mistake. Correct.
And Champion Tree Park.
Yep.
But
Champion Tree Park was the other one that I spoke about of moving to 26, and I see that that's there as well. So I know the budget represents a lot of work from city staff, department heads, and the council members, and I'm sure there will be a little bit more discussion tonight, but I feel like we're moving in a good direction. Thank you.
all right, any other questions or comments? Yes, Taylor.
I had sent an email just prior, we got this the Monday before Thanksgiving, I had a chance to review it, and I sent an email out to Mayor and Council about this topic on Champion Tree Park. I know we didn't, it just moved by a year. My understanding was from our November meeting that we were actually, based on some of the comments, including Meg's comments about wanting more input on that, and it seemed to me that it was better off if we had the planning money in 25's budget and the actual construction of it slated for 26. Of course, there's no guarantee that it would be funded in 26, but I know that the concern was getting more input about it, and it seemed logical to me to include money to go through that effort through 2025 to see if it is an actual project for 26. So my request, I'm fine with everything else. My request would be to not defer Champion Tree Park into 26 and to move it into 25 for the planning portion of it, not the actual construction portion of it. So that's my only request as far as any final changes to the budget.
Thank you, Taylor. And I'll add my support for that, and if it gets in there, it's great. If it doesn't, it's fine as well. But this is actually a park that's been talked about for 10 years. We've talked about Champion Tree Park since we bought the property. We purchased it as green space with the hopes of preserving the property and the tree on it. The tree itself is around 200 years old, and it's always had a lot of devotion from the community, and so hopeful again just to get $50,000 in the 2025 budget so that we can go ahead and start doing the community input and planning on it for hopefully what could be a future park. But just wanted to add my thoughts on that as well. Alvin is not here because of surgery, but he also would like to put that $50,000 back in there, something that the Youth Council has had an interest in for a long time, especially the current Youth Council. So, all right, anybody else? Yes, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, Champion Tree Park, I understand if that's a conversation we need to have of adding it back into 2025, I'm open to that. I think my concern is, along with Mr. Perkles, is the downtown public parking. Is there any way we can get plans? I know it's in SPLOST and everything like that, exactly what that entails, the downtown public parking line item in general. Is it just, what does that look like?
When there can be parking controls of existing facilities such as Solis and City Hall, parking deck, and E-Center. As we get moving forward, access controls are sometimes an important addition. We had $5 million in the 2023 SPLOST for public parking, and that was done almost 6 months to a year prior to the actual November referendum, and that was in anticipation of the need for more parking downtown. And so that's why it's in there, and we provide those categories to Gwinnett County in the call, and then they are actually items in our intergovernmental agreement that was adopted by City Council before submission to the county for the actual referendum. Troy?
Yeah, if I can add, the original question was about, do we have any plans for parking area? No, we don't. We have had a discussion tonight about how we were going to pay for things and when we were going to start design process. I think that's part of where we put it in a plan, should you wish to continue looking for parking solutions, is what does the parking solution look like? Where is the parking solution? Is it structured? Is it surface parking? Are there parking controls that we can utilize existing spaces better on a time controlled basis, or that kind of thing? So I think there's opportunity for us to find out more about it if we want to start aiming in that direction. I think we'll see that based on some surveys that we've done this past year with the streetscape project, we know that we've got a certain number of spaces, what the demand is based on the land use, and then we can start looking for solutions, whether they be surface parking or structured parking.
Yes, Meg.
Just one more thing. As I'm looking at the capital improvement budget on the monitor in front of me, I just want to clarify. It does say, next to the word new, Oak Street Inclusive Playground, and that is in 2025. So the playground,
The
but not
50,
pickleball.
the 50,000 is in there for, that's correct, inclusive playground. Pickleball's not in there.
Right.
Yep.
That's all I understood.
Yes, ma'am. And it says delete Oak Street Pickleball Park right there.
Right.
All right, any other questions or comments? The parking deck, it doesn't start until 2026, correct? Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on and take this up next Monday. This version or another version. All right, next we'll move on to this IBC code amendment adoption. I think we've talked about that before. Logan?
Alrighty. Yes, so this is a 2018 International Residential Code Amendment. The building inspector has proposed an amendment that reduces some ambiguity in interpretation. We brought this a month or two, or 2 months ago, I believe. Has to do with fire-resistant construction and exterior walls, fire separation. We are wanting to remove the term projections from the list of exceptions in the firewall separation to make it a little more stringent, just to clear up some ambiguity that we've run into in the field. We transmitted this to DCA 102124. They responded November 5th with a recommendation of no comment, just pretty standard. So we are recommending approval and adoption of this amendment.
Thank you, Logan. Any questions? All right, we'll move on to new business. And next up will be the Hillside Holdings project. Claire.
Good evening. Staff received an application for annexation at the properties at 5871 Hillside Farm Road and 545 Riverside Road, located kind of near the corner of Highway 20 and Swanee Dam Road, located behind the Publix next to Emerald Lake subdivision. One property is currently zoned RA 200 agricultural residential in Gwinnett County, and the other is R 100 single family residential in the county. This is their proposed site plan. It features 3 main buildings centered around like a courtyard with the parking on the exterior. It features access from Riverside Road as well as Hillside Farm Road, which goes through the Sugar Hill Corner Shopping Center. This is the location of the event facility. The event facility would require a special use permit. It restricts operating hours as well as has a minimum distance of at least 50 feet undisturbed from a neighboring use. This has approximately 300 feet of undisturbed forest between the event facility and the neighboring subdivision. This is the location of the chapel. And then the third proposed use is for a brew pub. The applicant is requesting rezoning to general business for the purpose of these 3 structures. Here's an additional view of the site plan, kind of zoomed out showing the access from Riverside Road and the Sugar Hill Corner Shopping Center, Hillside Farms Road entrance. And with the topography. With rezoning to general business, this would, there would be a 75-foot buffer that would be implemented against all residential properties. So I'm going to kind of go through those one by one and outline what the request is and what it's for. So the first one is located at this Blue Star. It's an existing residential structure that is currently being used as an office. The request is for, so the building sits about 56 feet from the property line. So the request is to reduce the 75-foot buffer down to about 25 feet to allow for an existing fence and cleared kind of backyard space for this structure. The only improvements that would be allowed to the building would be for commercial compliance, so bringing it up to ADA. All other parking and the access drive is located outside of the 75-foot buffer. Next is a buffer reduction of to about 15 feet. So there is an existing gravel driveway. So this would be for access improvements for the Riverside Road access drive. Improvements in this area. This area has been cleared, and there is the existing gravel driveway there. The only proposed improvements would be for the access drive within the 75-foot buffer there. They are additionally requesting a reduction to 20 feet from 75 feet against these two parcels that are their Georgia Transmission Corporation parcels. They currently host a utility substation. It would be a reduction to 20 feet for stormwater management, including but not limited to a storm pipe or ditches that would be needed for the stormwater management of the proposed development. And then the final variance request is at Riverside Road. It's for entrance improvements. The neighboring property is zoned R100 in Gwinnett County, but currently sits vacant. There is an existing curb cut, and so the reduction request is to 0 feet for the access improvements for that driveway, as well as a potential need for additional stormwater management on that side of the property. Additionally, this property, parcel 7339294, is not part of the application for annexation and rezoning, but it will be part of the larger project being used for the stormwater management. So some of that would be going, across the Georgia Transmission Corporation parcels, and that's why that buffer encroachment would be necessary. Additionally, the applicant did submit a traffic study looking at the intersections shown here on this photo. The only improvements that were recommended by the traffic study was inside of the Sugar Hill Corner Shopping Center at the internal Publix Road at Hillside Farm Road to have a two-way stop intersection to just enhance the safety of that intersection within that commercial project. So that is shown here with the pink star. Additionally, the applicant submitted this aerial image with the project overlaid to show the distance to the neighboring properties. The chapel sits about 275 feet from the property line, that being undisturbed woods in between, and over 300 feet from the farthest clearing for the event facility. And the building itself. This was presented at the November 18th Planning Commission meeting. Planning Commission discussed the application, and they have not provided a recommendation to City Council. There was one motion to table the item to discuss further the use of gravel as part of the driveway improvements, as well as the possibility to reduce the buffer along the Emerald Lake subdivision to 50 feet instead of 25 feet, and having the applicant remove the existing fence and replant where that yard is. That motion did not pass. There was an additional motion that was made to approve the annexation and rezoning with conditions to not allow gravel as part of the driveway improvements, as well as to make a condition for that same buffer reduction to be 50 feet and replanting at the Emerald Lake subdivision. Staff is recommending approval of the annexation as well as the approval of the rezoning to general business and the special use permit for an event facility for parcels 7339121 and 7339057. With several conditions, the first being site plan conformance, The next being traffic improvements for the intersection in the Sugar Hill Crossings shopping center, as recommended by their submitted traffic study. Number 3 is that all structures need to be brought into compliance for commercial use if they are not proposed to be demolished. Number 4, the site plan also includes, and their letter of intent includes several possible recreation uses, including a pickleball court. So any pickleball courts shall be a minimum of 500 feet from any residences, or 200 feet if soundproofing is used. Number 5, natural gas appliances shall be used. Number 6, so the next few kind of go through the buffer reductions. Staff is recommending approval of the reduction to 25 feet from 75 feet against the Emerald Lake subdivision, with no additional improvements within the buffer encroachment being permitted. Number 7 is that the buffer shall be reduced to 15 feet at where the existing gravel driveway is for those driveway improvements. And again, no additional improvements would be permitted. The zoning buffer shall be reduced to 20 feet against the Georgia Transmission Corporation parcels for stormwater management only. And then the zoning buffer shall be reduced to 0 feet at the Riverside Road access for driveway improvements, sewer connections, and stormwater detention.
Thank you, Claire. That's a lot to go through. I've got one question before I open it up to City Council, and it's related to the suggestions that the Planning and Zoning Commission made. I understand the paved with concrete or asphalt. Can you explain again their number 2 item? Is that where the old home is up against Emerald Lake, and there? Can you kind of explain that a little bit better to me if you can?
Yes. So the existing home, and it's quite a few slides back, but I'll try and get there quick. There's an existing residential structure there currently being used as an office, the applicant has stated. And so that house would have to be required to be brought into compliance for commercial use. However, really just ADA compliance, parking requirements, all of that would be outside of the 75-foot buffer. So the request is so that the use of this structure is in compliance with our ordinance. It shows kind of at the bottom of where the circle is, there's a fence that goes around where the backyard of the house would be. So Planning Commission suggested removing that fence and replanting where there is a clearing for the backyard.
Okay, got it. Thanks for the visual on that. All right, any questions or comments from City Council? Yes, Taylor.
Where are they proposing to use gravel? Why was that a comment from Planning Commission?
I did not see the use of gravel on their site plan listed or in their letter of intent.
I didn't see.
Gravel would not be permitted, however, under our current ordinance.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's what confused me. I wasn't, because I didn't think it was permitted and I didn't see it on there, so I wasn't sure if we were missing something. So I appreciate that. What about you mentioned about the SUP for the event facility. What are has the applicant proposed operating hours for the event facility?
I don't think that they have proposed specific operating hours for their project, but the operating hours would be limited to, per our ordinance, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
You have to be within those bounds.
All right. And something else that might be helpful for Monday, or if you can send to us on council, is what the previous iteration of the site plan was, since this seems to be, based on my recollection, a fairly substantial change from the original site plan. I think that would be helpful so that we understand what changes have been made in an effort to satisfy the neighboring parcel owners' concerns over the use. I think that would be helpful to have that in context of the improvements. That's, one other thing, there's a buffer reduction for the driveway going out to Riverside, if you can pull that up.
Here we are. Yes.
Actually, further, not that specific one, not the actual entrance, but there's a buffer reduction closer up to the buildings in the parking lot that was being requested, where they got there. It might be something we would consider if council chooses to move forward with this project, is replanting that after they grade that in, adding additional screening and plantings there, because I know that's been a concern. I know that does not adjoin the Emerald Lake subdivision, that's against a parcel that the city owns, but that may be something that we may choose to consider as well. That's all I've got. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Taylor. Anybody else? Yes, Meg?
Claire, did I hear you say that there was a house there that's being used for commercial purposes? I thought
From
you
what I
mentioned.
understand, from what the applicant has stated, yes.
Okay,
That
but,
is in the county currently.
oh, in Gwinnett County, okay. And then the other question that I had was on the application, it says proposed development, microbrewery or brew pub on the application. The letter of intent says at this time they're seeking approval for a brew pub. And it would seem to, and then on the site plan here, it says brewery. I think it needs to be very clear, because if it's going to be a microbrewery later on, they have to come back for a special use permit for that. I think it should be clear that on the recommendation is for, staff acceptance as a brew pub. I think that needs to be made more clear, since on the application it says microbrewery or brew pub. And there are two very distinct differences between microbreweries and brew pubs. And my other question is, with the chapel that's being proposed, I'm assuming that the chapel is only for it's a wedding event venue? Is that what you were led to believe? Yes. So the primary purpose of the brew pub cafe or brew pub is for church services. That's because they're not doing church services in the chapel.
I cannot speak to the primary purpose of the brew pub facility. The applicant has stated that they would be utilizing that facility for church services.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Josh?
I guess my one concern I have is the kind of acceleration, deceleration lanes, and I guess the non-existence of them off Riverside. Is that correct? It's just going to be a straight turn left, turn right?
Yes.
Okay.
As proposed, yes.
I mean, Riverside, as we all know, Riverside Road is not a great road as it is. And I mean, that just with the volume of traffic anticipated, I'm assuming, not going to be a fantastic road to get access either left nor right, to either get to the red light. So that's just a concern that I have with that. And I know that the neighbors of Emerald are not thrilled with the egress into the shopping center to gain access here. So just some access issues I think that our community's really worried about, and I think we kind of need to get those addressed and see what the best is here, and if we can work out some of those to make it a little bit more amendable if possible. So,
Thank you, Josh. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll have the public hearing on this next Monday night. And I think the applicants are here. They've heard some of the maybe questions and concerns that can be answered over the next week, either through Claire or maybe even directly with some of the council members, if that works for them. All right, next we'll move on to item number 5. That is a design review for a medical office. Logan, thank you.
All right. right, so this is design review within the Central Business District 24-004, the final one of the year. It'll be at 5423 Nelson Brogdon Boulevard. You may also know this property as the location where Lidl may or may not be in the future. Still to be determined, but it'll be in the Sycamore Square Shopping Plaza mixed-use area. They are proposing a 4,113 square foot medical urgent care office, just single tenant structure. Structure is going to be primarily finished in brick with architectural metal panel accents, kind of as you see here on the site, on the screen. The applicant has submitted 2 options for site layout. So option 1 is this one, where the building is going to be in the back and the parking is going to be at the front. This works best with the adjacent property because there is an existing curb cut there. However, there are a number of variances that would need to be approved, somewhat in contradiction with the overall intent and goal of the Central Business District overlay. However, they have submitted a secondary option where the building is more street-oriented, street-forward, that staff is recommending approval on with the parking at the rear. And then there are a number of variances that they will need to be considered. They are asking for relief from the 1 tree per 10 interior parking space requirement. We've built in a condition that kind of helps to find a compromise between that because they physically cannot fit the required tree density units on the property with the parking just because it is so small. But we are, one of our conditions, we're proposing some enhanced landscaping strips surrounding the property. Another one is the 0 to 12 foot setback required from the right-of-way within the Central Business District. There's a 15 feet of a Georgia Power easement encroaches onto the property, which makes that physically impossible. So one of our conditions is to be 0 to 12 feet off of the utility easement. So in theory, it would be really between 15 and 27 feet back from the road. The Exhibit 3, the applicant's site plan, if council decides to move forward with that option, they will need a variance to remove the required rear parking within the Central Business District. Architectural variances, there are a couple. Awnings are, the awnings they've proposed with the structure, they exceed 8 feet in length as well as 42 inches in projection. The applicant has stated they may revise this, but we're still kind of discussing with them at this time. We should have some more information for you within the next couple days. We can try and push that out. They are also lacking front and rear entrances, another CBD requirement to have a street-facing entrance as well as a rear-facing entrance. Glazing, they need 50% minimum for street-facing. I think they're around 30% right now off the top of my head. That's another item we're working with them to try and figure out just to see if they don't even need the variance at all, just increase that glazing area. And then the final architectural variance will be the dumpster in the front yard. Again, if council decides to move forward with parking in the front, their dumpster will also need to be in the front, which would require another variance. And then just going through the conditions briefly, number 1, final building design and site layout. Staff is recommending approval of exhibits 1 and 2. That's going to be the street forward building, the one where parking is in the rear. Number 2, setback line shall be 0 and 12 feet off the utility easement along Highway 20. Number 3 is that landscape strip condition I mentioned. Number 4 is the glazing condition, which may also be addressed. Number 5, all awnings and canopies shall be approved as shown in Exhibit 2, should council approve that variance. Any outdoor utility structure shall be screened from public view, not to detract from the building's street-facing facades. Number 7, ornamental streetlights approved by Georgia DOT for Highway 20 shall be installed. They're coordinating with the Sycamore Square developer to install those. They will be coordinating with them to install those. We haven't quite worked out the details on that, but there will be ornamental streetlights there. Sidewalks, again, constructed in accordance with the paver details. Sidewalks already there, built by that developer. We're just make sure any other sidewalks modifications will meet our standards. And then number 9, environmental clearance documents shall be prepared by a professional environmental engineer, geologist, scientist, or specialist. This used to be the old Citgo gas station. It's our understanding that the gas tanks are still underground, so they will need to get those out. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you, Logan. Appreciate it. I'll just make a couple comments. I'm excited that someone's finally doing something with that old Citgo property that's been an eyesore for a long time. I prefer the least amount of variances possible, and I like the parking on the back of the building. That's just my opinion. Others may have a different opinion, but I thought I would express it. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Gary?
I had some, if you go back to the first set of conditions there.
Sure.
So the building setback there, if our ordinance states it should be placed closer to the building, I understand why we'd want that on Broad Street to others. I don't want that on Highway 20. Any expansion, they'll widen the road at some point. They'll probably go interior first. But if you're putting this building right on the edge of it, that's going to cost more and cause problems for future expansion if they go outside there. You got people, it's a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. Nobody drives that. If you drive 55, you're almost getting run over. I'd rather be pushed further back off the road and rear face to the rear of the property as opposed to the front. If you got it at the front, they're going to have to do basically 2 fronts on the building. One that's going to front on Highway 20 that nobody's going to use, and everybody's going to have to come in the back, and so that'll be a front face of the building as well. That just seems a bit unnecessary. I don't really like the idea that the dumpster would be up front, but I know Chick-fil-A just put theirs on Buford Highway, the dumpster facing Buford Highway. It's screened and enclosed. It's not detracting there, but I just think given the traffic along that road, that's a better thing. The other thing is the tree requirement. I counted 15 spaces, which we're talking about 1 tree there, if it's 1 per 10, right?
We're asking for that variance.
Okay, but I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? How many spaces do you have? I counted 15.
The top of my head, I don't know.
7 on one side, 8 on the other. That's 15, so it's 1 tree. So maybe they can fit the 1 tree in there, and in general, I like having the tree things there. I do prefer that the parking lot be separated by trees, but if there's only that few spaces, yeah, I can see where it'd be a problem putting a tree in a small parking lot that size. So I don't have as much heartburn about that as I would in some other situations where we're reducing the requirements there. So those are just the thoughts that occurred to me.
Thank you, Gary. Anybody else? Yes, Taylor.
Logan, if we put the building up front and the parking in the back, are we going to end up with the elevation 6, the rendered north elevation facing Highway 20, which would be that bottom left? Is that what we would end up with, facing Highway 20?
As of right now, yes. However, we are talking with the applicant because that needs to be increased to at least 50% glazing. We've been trying to work with them to get that to look more like a proper storefront.
When you say,
the CBD kind of.
But can you say what glazing is?
I'm sorry, windows.
Okay, got it.
Glass.
Slide the whole building. Back though, the front would still be the front. It's just back off the road. You wouldn't have the back of it toward the road.
Well, I think that the side facing the front would face the parking lot. Isn't that correct? That
The parking lot, yeah, if the parking lot.
number 4 would be facing the parking lot. And again, talking about if the parking is in the rear, number 4 would face the parking lot. Number 6 would face Highway 20, correct?
Ideally, we would like both sides to look the same. but-
Right, but I mean, what we're talking about here is these variances that we're talking about, in reality, they're not going to have a door, because if they put a door in over there, they're going to lose an exam room, it looks like, based on the interior layout up there in the top left. So, to me, while I would prefer to have the building closer to the road, unless there's some substantial improvements to number 6, I don't see how you put the building facing, or building on the front side of the property, because it's just going to look weird in that context. Like Gary pointed out, on West Broad Street, it makes all the sense in the world for the buildings to be up on the street. But in this particular case, given the layout of the property, I don't know how much glaze, you could probably put a lot of glazing on there, but then again, it's a medical facility, so you don't want a lot of glazing because you need privacy, so.
And some of that can be privacy glass, like we don't have to see into every
Right.
exam room.
Sure. No, you definitely don't want that. Anyway, this is just a few thoughts on my end. I think it's in this particular case, we may have to make a compromise here and put the building towards the back, just because of the property. And it's great to see the Citgo property get redeveloped, so that's a big win. So, and given unfortunately the need for urgent care, often we probably do a very good business. So,
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see the Citgo property being redeveloped and everything like that. I think the property in the rear is going to make the most sense, especially with the window requirement, glazing requirement. There's a property over in Johns Creek off of McGinnis Ferry, very similar right here, and they have the glazing requirement right there at the corner at the red light, and they've got front doors on McGinnis Ferry, and no one uses front doors. It doesn't look good aesthetically. So I think the parking in the front right there facing Highway 20, put the building in the back. The curb and the asphalt going into that property is already there anyway, so it's going to help them at least to start. So.
Yes, Taylor, go ahead.
just to follow up on that, I think that's a great point that Josh is making. If there were several rows of parking, if you were talking about multiple, 4, like a big box retail, then I think that's where you look at ways to maybe have 2 front entrances where you have a smaller amount of parking on the front, more in the rear. But in this particular case, for this small of a building, I'm in agreement with Gary and Josh's comments on that.
I will say, from a planning standpoint, if you do consider the kind of entire anticipated site, at least with the layout of future Lidl, or whatever grocery store that may go there, it is also a straightforward building. And it has been designed very well. I will give them that. We do want to work with the applicant to get this facade to be attractive on the front. But from a planning standpoint, we really do feel that the building should be straightforward, just putting it out there, so.
Yes, Josh?
With that comment in mind, I'm not sure if the planning department can come up with some sort of rough sketch of future development, including the proposed Lidl, or what else can be developed on there. Because in my mind, what I'm picturing there is, of course, the Lidl. I'm picturing the retention detention pond stormwater facility, and I've got the old Citgo property. I guess I'm not picturing any other development on that lot that's cleared off currently right now. If we're talking about additional, if there's more land there that I do not know of, I'd be open to have that conversation. I'm just not seeing it. So there you go.
No, absolutely. I'm somewhat skilled in that, so I can see if I can try and put together a very quick sketch of how the whole site might look eventually, aspirationally. It's just a small piece of the puzzle, but, they all have to fit together, so.
And Logan, if we can't get this done in a week, we can do it in January as well. I think the most important thing is we get it right, so but next time. Yes, Gary?
Yeah, an additional comment about the Lidl. If they're designed front to the road, I'm sure that's because they had the same requirement when we told them to put it front to the road. Personally, I'd rather see it back and have an out parcel or two, maybe another restaurant in there. That's a fairly large parking area, I believe it's going to be. I haven't seen the footprint of the building, but I don't know why they would have particularly thought it was an advantage to be up to the road. And the same thing, you're going to have to put two fronts on the store, and typically in a grocery store, your back area, I don't know about Lidl, but the grocery stores I worked in, your back area is where all your stock comes in and is delivered. So where your truck's going to come, and where are you going to store your inventory that you haven't put out in the aisleways yet, if you don't have that more secluded area with a more rear-facing property. But those are things we can deal with. I'm sure when they come up, we'll have a design review on them as well. But, this one, I think it's definitely better off not being right on the road.
All right, Taylor, I think has another comment.
Yeah, follow up on Gary's comments about Lidl. In that particular case, the parking is, my memory is going off memory here, is parking is primarily off to the side. The building actually fronts up mostly on Sycamore. So in that case, it actually worked out well because you kind of have it off to the side, and they do have a loading dock in the back. So they've got that, and their front entry is kind of at the corner. Again, I'm going off memory here, of the building there. And so it actually makes sense for the way they've laid out their building. But this also goes back to what Josh was just saying. I think if we see this layout in context with the Lidl and then the development that was proposed that was part of that zoning that's behind it, I think at that point, I think it probably would help, especially since we have a lot of newer council members, see what that whole parcel looked like. Because I know we talked about this specific parcel during that zoning, and I know that the developer had attempted to acquire it and was unable to at the time. So it would be good now that this is coming before us to see that with the entire site plan together. That would be very helpful.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, any other questions or comments? I'll make a comment about Lidl because I try to be very positive about them coming to our community. I actually spoke to them in August, and they still do have plans to come to Sugar Hill. So currently, they are not in build-out phase because they're shipping their product from North Carolina to all their stores in Georgia, and with inflation and the way the economy has been, it's just not cost effective for them to do that, and they're not able to provide groceries at the low cost that they like to provide it at. And so they are building a facility, I think in either Conyers or Covington, I can't remember, Covington, and when they're done with that, they'll have their distribution in place here, and they will begin the process of building out based on the plans that they've established in the past. And they've already invested a lot of money in the property, including all of the groundwork and utilities and everything that's underneath the dirt. And so I'm going to take them at their word, and I'm going to be positive, but also knowing and understanding that we have zero control over the economy here at City Hall. So that's going to ultimately determine whether or not they come to our community or not. But just wanted to say
on
that.
the planning department front, they have met all of their permitting requirements. The ball's in their court, so.
And if this is all together, it'll be fantastic. But thank you. All right, so done with that one. All right, we're going to move on to item number 6, and that is Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to tag team this with City Clerk Whittington. A bill passed, the Georgia House Bill 451, which is the Ashley Wilson Act. In regard to a police officer in Gwinnett that was second on the scene for a tragic event, and she suffered greatly PTSD, and so she was a big advocate for that at the Capitol, and General Assembly did pass an act that basically directs governmental authorities to have coverage for PTSD for law enforcement, including correctional officers and the like. The only person ever get through to me is spam. Excuse me. The law went into effect July 1, but by this year we need to have something in place. The Georgia Municipal Association, through GIRMA, which is the Georgia Risk Management Property and Liability coverage, has developed a strategy and a policy for us to consider that would cover both our reserve officers and our regular officers in the Marshal Service. And I'll let Jane take the rest of it. We've got a quote of what it would cost us annually. And we have a resolution before you that we'd like you to consider to adopt next Monday. So Jane?
All right. Thank you, Paul and Jane. Any questions, comments? Yes, Josh.
I guess it's a technical question. I'm not sure if it's answered in the packet or not. I didn't see it. But what happens if we have a peace officer that is covered currently, they leave their post, and then they come back to us to make a claim? Is that on us, even if they're with a different department because they're claiming PTSD from an event that happened here? Or I'm not sure how does that work in terms of who are they claiming it with? Or is this purely only for our folks who are actively employed? Okay.
Part of our census, but if the other entity, they would apply. That entity. Let's ask you what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We'll move on to item number 7, and that is the annual agreement that we do for landfill expense reimbursement. Troy.
I think you summarized it well. The landfill has monitoring expenses post-closure that we engage in annually. It's probably about $10,000, $15,000, of which about half of that is eligible for reimbursement under this program. It is called the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, but it doesn't involve hazardous waste, nor do we have hazardous waste in our closed landfill, just to clarify that. There is an agreement that we're required to approve and sign with EPD for this program, and there's a resolution that was provided in the packet to accomplish that. So the recommendation is to approve the resolution and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement for the reimbursement.
Thank you, Troy. Any questions about this item? All right, next we'll move on to item number 8, the Transco project agreement. That's you as well, Troy.
Thank you. This is one that we talked about in the capital improvement budget presentation. We have the documents from Transco that outline the actual work and provide for the reimbursement of the expenses associated with the city's I'll call it the tap, but it's the city gate at the transmission pipeline. And the agreement outlines the work they're going to complete, how they're going to construct it and operate it, and the payments required under the agreement. I have mentioned that the 2025 capital improvement budget has funding identified from SPLOST and from gas reserves in the amount of $1,575,000 or thereabouts. And then there is going to be a payment required, should the council approve this agreement, in 2024 in the amount of $571,890. We did not have that in the 2024 budget, so should the council approve this item, there would be a corresponding budget amendment to the 2024 budget. There are funds in the gas reserves to pay the 2024 amount required under the agreement. And then the last two payments would be in 2025 at key points in the project development. There is a design phase, there's a procurement phase, and then there is a construction phase that's required. The actual connection to Transco, I found out today, was actually installed in 1967. So it's a little bit older than me, maybe as old as Gary. And so we've benefited quite a while from the connection. It served our 12,000 customers well, but it is part of the aging infrastructure, and the need to replace it happens with time. Transco and its parent company Williams is responsible for the permit they've got with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they are the only ones that can actually perform this work. They will engage contractors to do so, but they're responsible for permitting, for safety, and for all the implementation costs associated with it on the front end. So we looked at the unit cost over a 10-year period, and for our unit of measure on the billing side, we bill in 100 cubic feet. It's about 3 cents per 100 cubic feet. We don't anticipate raising the rates, but that's just what the actual cost would be over that 10-year period. Looking at the expense that we incur because we have to buy peak gas at certain times during the year and swap capacity with other member cities with the gas authority, that we do incur some cost annually because we don't have the upgraded connection. So we're kind of gauging that payback period is a little under 10 years as well. So with that, the recommendation is to approve the project with Transco for the upgraded tap, and authorize the mayor to sign the interconnect reimbursement construction and operating agreement upon final legal review. And then thirdly, to approve the budget amendment to provide for that initial payment.
All right, thank you, Troy. Any questions or comments from City Council? Yes, Gary.
I have no problem with the project. I would prefer that we fund it completely out of the SPLOST to the extent that's available. SPLOST funds are restricted in certain ways they can be spent, and anytime we can spend them in those categories, we should. Gas reserves we can spend on any expense we have, and I would rather do it completely out of SPLOST. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on. That's the last item. We'll now move on to city manager discussions and reports.
Thank you, Mayor, and I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. And obviously winter is here. Temperatures good for our gas system, but I want to talk to you about the absence of Art tonight. He extends his sincere apologies for not being here. He's going through a family emergency, a family difficulty, and all I ask is that y'all keep him and his family in your prayers, and he will be back as soon as he can. But it's something that unfortunately many of us have to go through. So, in terms of our event schedule, I see Avery's in the back, but we have events and activities that are taking place in 26 of the 31 days in the Eagle this in December. The Bull and the Eagle are activated 26 of the 31 days, 15 days of rentals with major events, 4 theater rentals totaling 15 days of rental, Home for the Holidays with Joe Granston, the holiday celebration coming up. The Children's Theater, on the stage Children's Theater will be performing, is it Annie Jr.? In the theater, and then during the winter break, we'll have $2 movies starting on the 23rd and then the following week leading up to New Year's at time. And those are always great to see families downtown in the Eagle. So if you have an opportunity, go to some of these events. These folks are very, very talented in what they do. I'm going to ask Andy to come up and give us a public safety update on the Marshal's office. And we will wait till next week to have Andy give you an update on recreation. Not a lot of golf going on right now, especially today, but there will be. It's still performing well. But Andy?
Yes, with the holiday season approaching, we know the calls for service are going to go out the roof with the porch partying and domestics. So this past month, Gwinnett PD has called on us on several occasions to help assist with the domestic incidents that happen within the city, as well as some criminal trespass where individual had burglarized the home previously. The homeowner saw him on camera again. He was on his back porch. Thought he had burglarized the house again. Our marshals went out there, assisted Gwinnett County with that. I was able to get the individual, arrest him for the burglary and criminal trespass. Another incident over here where an individual had several warrants on him. They called for our assistance. We located him inside of a trash dumpster. They in turn sent the canine in. The canine came out with the individual attached to his arm. Again, every time we have something happen within the city, we call on Gwinnett County. The transition, handing the case over to them goes seamlessly. But with that, our community events programs, we're still up and running with those. All the events downtown, we have a presence there at every event, and we'll continue to do so throughout the holiday season, and hopefully deter as much criminal activity as we can.
Questions?
Thank you.
Troy, want to give an operations and construction update?
I can refer you to the public construction update, which is recently uploaded as of today. The only other thing I'll mention is ER Snell is making good progress on the Highway 20 widening. They've started the work on the stormwater requirements that new road projects have to meet, and they're also making their way on the median reconstruction. If you go through that area, you'll see it. I encourage you to pay attention to the workers while you're out there driving, but that's all I'll mention at this point.
Okay. Mayor, finally, under item number 1 tonight, you took up you were dealing with RZ 24004, 1036 and 1040 Whitehead Road. That's the Hedgewood project. I can tell you that just before the meeting tonight, we received a revised site plan for the development, and we will share that site plan with you tomorrow, so you can see how it differs from the one that was subject to this agenda item. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me, Troy, or our planning staff, but they'll tell me if you reach out to them. So glad to go over what the site plan looks like and the differences that I see, but y'all have a good set of eyes as well. But we have received a revised site plan. Here's my report.
All right, thank you. I know we do.
I have a
Yes.
question. On the Highway 20 widening, do we have any details on the bridge replacement and what that plan is for traffic?
I have not seen a staging plan for it, but I'll get one and we'll circulate it.
Do we know if they plan on building a new bridge to the side and then taking down the old, or what
No, they're just adding on to the existing bridge is the plan.
so that bridge will stay there?
Extend the Bents and add new capacity for the Greenway Trail and for any additional lanes that are required
Okay, and that's all going on one side of the bridge, on both sides?
on both sides, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, we do have a need for executive session. Mr. Perkle and I both have a real estate matter to bring up. Is there other items to discuss? All right, is there a motion to go into executive session? I have a motion from Meg. Is there a second? Second from Josh. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, we're going to go into executive session. I don't think we'll have a need to take anything up afterwards, but you're welcome to hang around if you want. Of executive session. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our December work session. Is there a motion?
Motion.
I have a motion from Taylor. Is there a second? Second from Gary. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, we are adjourned until next Monday.